Hello and welcome back to coverage here at Grand Prix Richmond, where it is in fact round 4. We've got a nice one here, Steve Rubin versus Yvonne, and they are already off to the races with mountains and swamps and 2-drops. Well, at least for one of our players. It looks like Yvonne's going to go ahead and cycle here to try to find his lands. Now, looks like we're seeing red, and then we don't have Steve Rubin's deck list yet, so we'll have to figure out what his other color is in a moment here. Though that Kenra might indicate blue or black.
It could be blue, but I believe I saw Soul Stinger in Steve Rubin's hand.
Okay, so that's a hint there. And then on Flock's side of the battlefield, well, kind of interesting.
Looks like a splash.
It looks like he may be splashing indeed. Steve's going to try to find that black mana. He's going to go cycle here, actually, on end step. Hooded Brawler and an Initiate's Companion from Yvonne Flock, representing quite a bit of damage.
Wow, and Steve still hasn't been able to find a land.
No land whatsoever. My goodness.
You know, we talk about this format kind of lowering variance a little bit, right? Because you do have the ability to cycle through all of your expensive cards to kind of make sure you hit your land drops. But sometimes you're just going to have 3 spells on top of your deck. Wow, Yvonne, he has 4 lands in play. They're all different.
You do not see that often, but here in sealed decks, sometimes you get an extra bit of time and you can make that work.
Yeah, there's a lot of good splashable cards in this format.
Here's Hooded Brawler attacking, no exert. The Nimbleblade Kenra, only a 1/3 as it sits.
Your favorite card?
It's Mouth!
It's your favorite card?
I love Mouth.
He's already got 3 3-power creatures on the battlefield.
He does. Next turn, he could draw 3 cards, and Steve really needs to find some lands here.
Yeah.
Specifically swamps, but anything just to keep that land count rising, and he can't.
Wow.
He, in fact, has to pass a turn back.
Wanted to see some nice games. We have 2 Platinum Pros on the same team duking it out. You know, you're playing in a Grand Prix, and Yvonne Flock, just 4 mana, draw 3 cards. No big deal.
Love that.
It's just so unlikely for you to play against a teammate or a great player in the early rounds of a Grand Prix just because there's so many people that attend. Keeping the cat back.
Attention, Magic players.
All right, so this block tells me he has some kind of a combat trick here.
Looks like brute strength there for Steve Rubin. And that is going to allow his Nimbleblade Kenra to survive that exchange. So that worked out pretty well for him. He was able to use a combat trick as a removal spell.
Yeah, it's a 4/4, and if Steve finds a swamp here, he's still not looking bad, but it looks like he still has not found a land. It's hard for Yvonne to attack into the 1/3. First of all, it seems like he's playing in a way where he doesn't want to take that trade. At the same time, if Steve just has any spell whatsoever, Yvonne will just get completely blown out here. But there was a Soul Stinger in Steve's hand again. If he just finds a Swamp Port, a Soul Stinger, it does basically get both of the creatures Yvonne has in play.
Yvonne went real deep with this deck. The Painted Bluffs, now he's got Gift of Paradise. Though the funny part is that his curve has been very pedestrian considering how many colors he has access to.
Yeah.
He cast Mouth as a 3/3, Initiate's Companion, Hooded Brawler, and now a Crocodile at a Crossing. It's just a bunch of power and toughness. He hasn't really done anything fancy.
Just a bunch of giant creatures. But again, that's a lot of value. He was able to use 1 card to put a 3/3 onto the battlefield and draw him 3 cards. Curious to see what his red splash ends up being. He's also got a Gift of Paradise. It would be boring if it was just something like an Electrify, you know. I kind of want to see something flashier.
You want to see the Splash Glorybringer?
Oh, yes. I definitely want to see that. Who doesn't, though? So Steve actually drew his Swamp, but chose not to play something.
Yeah, he's got an Electrify that he wants to use to take down the Croc.
But the Hooded Brawler is still a 4/3, so that is not a good block for Steve.
Wow, and look at this follow-up play here from Yvonne Flock, the greatest sandworm.
Greatest sandworm.
What a champion.
Not a lot. Steve, if Steve found a land, he could maybe find a final reward for the sandworm. Maybe something like a Bone Picker would also work. But Currently, it is unblockable. Steve is at 3.
And that's going to be game. Yvonne Flock with the curve out, really hammering on Steve Rubin, who was missing land drops and just having a hard time hanging in that game as a result. And Flock was able to leverage that mana advantage that he gained. Also the cards, let's not forget Feed. Feed drew him 3 extra cards that turn, and he was able to deploy just far more threats and leave a bunch of cards stranded in Steve Rubin's hand. Now, we'll have to see if Steve can turn things around for the second game. We'll be back right after these messages with that. Here, Grand Prix Richmond. We're just taking a look at the deck list of Yvonne Flock, and we were both disappointed and excited.
Yeah, so we saw a Painted Bluffs and some mountains, and I was saying, well, it would be nice if we saw a pretty sweet red splash, but it ended up just being Electrify. But he does have everybody's favorite enchantment, Sandworm Convergence. Is that along with
that is my favorite
3 copies of the greatest Sandworm in all the land.
God, this deck is sweet. Greatest Sandworm Convergence, Mouth to Feed. Speaking of, by the way, Flock went Cycle on turn 1, Cycle on turn 2, Mouth on turn 3.
Look at the value.
Is it fair to say taste it?
He does have 2 copies of Wandering Death too. So
okay,
that's 5 mana draw 2.
Yeah, so that is interesting for him, right? Because that does lead him to be much more aggressive with cycling his creatures early, knowing that he can buy them back later. In the meantime, Rubin, a much more reasonable draw here with the Nefcrop Entangler as a good attacker already getting in there for a bit. And the Wasteland Scorpion also looks quite strong against Flock.
Yeah.
Flock is going to go ahead and trade off. Now, he's not traditionally happy to do so. It's a Grimstrider there for Steve Rubin. He showed Flock how many cards he had in his hand. I think it's 3 or 2.
Yeah, it's 3, so I believe it is currently a 3/3.
Yep.
But Steve actually able to play spells this time around.
Yeah, so we're going to get to see a real game here. Oh, Grimstrider down. And this looks like a pretty reasonable spot for Flock. He's got, like you said, the ability to get creatures back from his graveyard, and it's pretty well stocked. And right now, he's only falling to 16 after this attack. It's not like he's under immense heat.
Right. Oh, okay. And a Wander Death from Steve. If he doesn't have the land, then yeah, Steve basically did take a turn off to get those creatures back. And it looks like Yvonne Flock's late game is much more powerful than what Steve has.
Yeah, if Yvonne can keep on hitting his land drops turn after turn, it just gets ugly.
Yeah, just so many worms.
Indeed. Oh, and there's a Crocodile of the Crossing as well, and he's going to go ahead and jam with that, get in for 4 damage, and even things up at 16 life total apiece. Steve may rethink attacking with that Scorpion.
Yeah, that card's just so brutal. The floor of this card is a 4-mana 4/3 haste, which is just a very good creature.
Exactly. Yeah, I got a couple of those in my sealed pool, and I thought, this card looks pretty good. I'll play it. And then I was just like, wow.
Oh, no, this card is ridiculous.
This card hits really, really hard. It's funny because when the set first comes out, you know, a lot of the cards kind of blend together. Right. You're like Ornery Kudu, Defiant Great Maw, this guy. You're like, I don't know. They all have counters. Some things happen, you know, but they start to stratosphere themselves out pretty quickly. And that one really has been one of the more impressive ones.
Yeah, as you just kind of play formats more and more, you start kind of recognizing the sizing, for example, of the creatures and what's good and what's bad, right? But when you first look at it, everything, you're just like, oh, yeah, 4-mana 4/4, 3-mana 3/3. It's like, well, no, in this format, X3s are very good, or in this format, X4s are very good. And you kind of figure that out the more and more you play.
Here's Steve just running Electrify out there and going, no, don't save your creature. and he didn't, so.
Yeah, it looked like Steve was off to a fairly aggressive start, but kind of slowed down a bunch since then. Yvonne not really able to utilize the power of feed this time around, having to trade away his creatures. Ooh, we're 1 away.
1 away from the greatest, and 2 away from the game, probably.
This maybe a Wandering Death here?
Yeah, it is. So what can he get back that actually matters here? He has Horror of the Broken Lands, Greatest Sandworm, and Crocodile of the Crossing are his options.
And the Emperor Crocodile. No, Crocodile. So he is, okay.
He's just going to go for the biggest possible threats.
Yeah, I think basically this, if I was in Steve's position here, it tells me Yvonne doesn't have a 7th land here. He's looking for that land. He's likely going to cycle because I think for the most part you'd want to get that Crocodile in play because that allows you to potentially double spell if you drop a cheaper card.
Sure. True Heart Twins here for Steve Rubin. That is going to apply some pressure. Okay. Means the Flock does need to do something. Like if he goes land Sandworm, you know, he could be in some trouble if Steve can untap and kill it.
Yeah, Steve would have to have a removal spell. Although the only thing that would really get it would be a Final Reward. It's pretty hard to kill the 7/7. And the nice thing about the Sandworm, the Scorpion's a very good defensive creature, but cannot block the Sandworm.
I know. It's the saddest Scorpion. Because it feels like it should, right?
Right.
Like that's kind of the deal with Scorpions. They kill things bigger than them.
You
but
the
worm just sort of schluffs it off like, didn't even
well, you don't get the
either.
nickname Greatest Sandworm for nothing.
No, that's true.
Yeah.
That's true.
You got to bring more to the table than just 7-mana 7/7. Oh, well.
There it is.
When you see land number 7 and we see that he has 3 of those in his deck.
Yeah, he just got one back. It was always going to happen this way, Steve Rubin. And, you know, the interesting thing, of course, about this as well is that this does force Steve to have some type of removal spell realistically. Because if he doesn't have much of an attack at all. Maybe attack with the Scorpion for 2 since it's not going to block. And certainly Yvonne's not going to be incentivized to trade. But doesn't look like much.
Yeah, so this is something that often happens when you're drafting these kind of green monster deck where you're just trying to survive and then tap out and play a Sandworm. A lot of the time, it's kind of a question of, all right, well, do you have the removal spell?
Yeah.
If you have the removal spell, the tempo is just too much because you're often trading up for mana, right? You're using a compulsory rest. You're using something along those lines to get rid of it, and then you just take a ton of damage. You're trying to stabilize with these giant monsters, and you know, does Steve have a Final Reward here? Or even like a Cartouche of Zeal here, right? If you played something like a Cartouche of Zeal, that would also get in for a lot.
There you go. Yeah, that's another good one. Yeah, gets in for 2, recognizing, hey, this thing's not going to block anyway. He plays a Nephcrop Entangler, and he's got a Grimstrider with only 1 card left in his hand. So, you know, he is applying maximum maximum pressure here. Yvonne, I believe, is at 10 now.
Yvonne, yeah, really can't attack on this spot.
Right.
And at this point, Steve can exert both of his creatures to give his entire team +2/+0 until end of turn because of the True Heart Twins. So then he's going to have a 5/3 Trampler, a 6/4, a 4/2, and however many cards he has in hand with the Grimstrider.
Yeah, you assume that he... it looks like actually I was wrong. He has 2 cards left in his hand, not 1.
Okay.
But, with 6 mana available, whether they're lands or spells, he's going to be able to empty out 1 or 2 of them next turn at the minimum.
Yeah.
So
the
that's a lot of heat.
Yeah, so Sandworm will be able to block the biggest creature, likely the True Heart Twins, as it will be a 6/4. But how many more creatures can he deploy here? Let's say he just plays like another Sandworm here.
That would be pretty good because he really needs he'd really ideally like a blocker for the Twins and the Strider.
Right.
And even then, he's still taking a bunch of damage, but you figure he could probably stabilize from that point.
Definitely.
All right, looks like he's going to maybe opt to play multiple creatures this turn.
It's probably a horror here as well.
Yeah, and we know he has that in his hand. So this makes sense.
Yeah.
This gives him the most number of blockers, and that Sandworm still threatening to kill whatever the biggest attacker is or whichever the most important attacker is from Steve Rubin.
Yeah, if Steve doesn't have a combat trick here, then, yeah, Yvonne will basically be able to eat the True Heart Twins for free.
Yeah.
Because nothing else can really attack. The only other reasonable attack Steve has is maybe attacking with the Scorpion, but that's just going to trade with the Bitterblade Warrior.
I mean, he could attack with his whole team here and put the maximum pressure on Yvonne, but he loses minimum 1 creature for, as you put it, free. Yeah. He makes trades probably for the other 2, and
then he takes...
and gets some damage in.
Right. Currently, the Grimstrider is a 3/3. Let's say he plays a land. It's a 4/4. It gets pumped twice by the True Heart Twins' exert ability on both the Entangler and the True Heart Twins. So that's 6 along with... Okay, so now that's 4/4. And then the Scorpion's also going to be a 4/2. So if he actually plays 1 more card out of his hand, then the Grimstrider will have 7 power, meaning that the Sandworm can't block it there. Wow.
And look at this. It's Splendid Agony to kill the Bitterblade Warrior and just take an entire blocker off the battlefield. How much are we looking at here? This looks like a huge attack now.
Yeah, so Steve, I mean, I can't imagine Steve really not attacking with everything here. Yvonne can basically, again, he gets to eat the True Heart Twins here because that's the biggest creature. Well, it's the second biggest creature on the board, but I think he'd rather do that and not trade with the Grimstrider here because it's 1 less damage. Then he puts the horror on.
Is he forced to just chump or to trade?
I think he might have to chump here, right? Because the Netcrop Entangler is currently a 5 power Trampler.
These are both trades here.
So this is 9 damage, actually.
Yeah,
so Yvonne goes down to 1.
But wait, there's more?
Oh.
He's got Splendid Agony there as well to reduce the Sandworm down to a 5/5.
And the Grimstrider becomes an 8/6.
It has 6 toughness, yeah, so it's going to survive that exchange. And Flock has fallen to 1 life.
Okay. He needs the double spell here.
Yes, if he can, he may be able to stabilize. Because remember, the Netcrop Entangler is exerted. It won't be untapping. And if he had something like a Scorpion plus a blocker or something like that would be very good for him.
Yeah. Would he be able to play 2 creatures if he drew his second Wonder in Death?
Let's see. He would have a total of 5 mana left over, assuming he does not hit a land drop for the turn.
Doesn't look like it.
I don't think so, no.
Yeah. Oh, no, he's got the Bitterblade Warrior.
Yeah, so he can play that.
If he has a land, he can play Bitterblade Warrior and the Crocodile.
If he has a land, he can do that.
Yes.
That is correct. And that would be really good for him.
Right. Now, if he's digging for another
looks like
play,
he's taking the Sandworm for a cycle.
If that were the case, if he doesn't have 2 plays this turn, I would have probably gotten the horror. I'm assuming he has 2 plays this turn, though, based on the creatures that he got here.
Yeah, he does. All right, Hooded Brawler plus the Bitterblade Warrior. Yeah. Of course, the reasoning that you're using is because one of them costs 1 mana to cycle versus 2, right?
Right, definitely. But he did not need to dig. So now Yvonne's going to have to chump block the Grimstrider with something and trade the Scorpion off with the Bitterblade Warrior, probably. I guess Steve doesn't necessarily have to attack with the Scorpion here. He could just choose to attack with the Grimstrider, and it will guarantee that that gets to eat something.
Yep. Kind of depends on what Steve drew. He drew a land. He's going to play that pre-combat to make sure the Strider's at maximum strength.
Yeah.
Looking at the board, Yvonne Flock does have 1 green mana available, and there is a combat trick that's relevant.
Yeah,
here.
but he's got 1 card in hand, and we know it's the Sandworm.
That's right.
So, and that's the thing. So he got the Sandworm. It's very unlikely for Yvonne to be able to play Sandworm and something else.
That's right.
So it could have been worth considering getting back a cheaper creature to set up for the next turn. Which is kind of hard. You have to think like multiple turns and figure out what your outs are.
But man, what if on that turn right there he drew a 3-drop or something?
Exactly, and that's the thing. You have to think how these turns are going to play out just based on the board state. And you know Steve's going to attack. Yvonne has to make the chump blocks. Then the next turn, you're going to have to play 2 creatures in 1 turn, and the Sandworm will not allow you to do that.
Yeah, that's just as it sat on the board. So yeah, I think Yvonne would have been better suited to go for the 4/4 rather than the 7/7 Sandworm there.
Or the Crocodile even.
Yeah, or the Croc, sure. All right, live looking. Brad Nelson versus Eduardo Sashgalik. Let's see what they're up to. Looks like up a game for Brad currently.
I know Eduardo likes to play a lot of colors. I currently see a forest and a plains on the board, but that looks like a Decimator Beetle maybe? Or it's a black-green card, right?
Yeah.
It's kind of with a cartouche of knowledge.
With a blue cartouche on it? Wait, what is happening
So he's
right
4
now?
colors.
All right, so there's a Gift of Paradise doing overtime work on that forest at the bottom of the screen.
Oh, man.
Goodness sakes.
Big fan of that Decimator Beetle. One thing that I learned after playing with the card is, you know, when it attacks, you get to remove a -1/-1 counter on one of your creatures and put a -1/-1 counter on an opposing creature.
Yeah.
What I learned is you don't actually have to remove a counter from one of your creatures to give a counter to something else.
Isn't that weird? Because it makes you think, oh, I'll pick up this counter and put it on
It makes you
yours.
think it's like a synergy card, right?
But
You
it's
use
not.
but it's not. It's just a great card.
It's just great.
Because it just attacks and shrinks something. Wow, is that a Samet? He's 5 colors!
What is going on?
5 colors!
He wants to play Samut with the Cartouche of Knowledge and the Decimator
Forest,
Beetle.
plains, knowledge. Oh, my goodness.
Eduardo.
You know what I want to see?
I want to see his deck list is what I want
does
to
he have
see.
the artifact with the Pyramid of the Pantheon?
God, I hope he doesn't. I'm looking now. Of course I'm going to look now. No, he doesn't. He is playing Oketra's Attendant.
Oketra's Attendant?
I'm not kidding.
How does he cast?
And Compulsory Rest as well.
Okay. This mana basis is real deep.
Yeah, Oketra's Attendant is the 3/3 flying for 3 white.
But it does cycle for
it
2
does
mana.
cycle as well. So
Oh, man.
he's got 1 plains in his list.
You know what would be really great? That would totally make my day.
What's that?
If he played the 5-color land. The indestructible.
He doesn't have it. he's got the cataracts. No, he does have Painted Bluffs in his deck somehow.
Oh yeah, that's a no-brainer.
Yeah, I guess you have to. For mana fixing though, it does look like he's pretty well set. He's got a Spring to Mind, which helps out quite a bit, and he's also got Gift of Paradise.
Does he have any Evolving Wilds?
×2. No Evolving Wilds.
This is still pretty ambitious, but it is sealed deck. The format is slower. Right?
Yeah.
So you do get a little more time because people don't curve out quite as perfectly as they would in normal drafts.
Ooh! Got a Sandworm.
That's a hasty Greatest Worm.
It is. He could attack for lethal here, but he's just going to attack with the worm because Samut would simply trade for the Horror of the Broken Lands.
And Brad, the only block he has is with the Hidden of the Broken Land, so likely just taking the damage here.
We're going to stay here for just a minute. Our first match is back underway, but this is a pretty big sequence, and I do want to see what happens very quickly here.
Yeah, I imagine the Samut is not attacking here.
All right, so the Dissenter cannot block. There you go. I don't think Samut is attacking.
Yeah. Oh, he had a mana up because that's a Channeler Initiate.
Yes.
Okay.
Oh, he is going to use Stamina there.
Yeah, it's supernatural stamina to turn the Doom Dissenter into a 3/1, which allowed it to block the Greatest Sandworm. Okay.
Now shouldn't? Oh, I see. But Eduardo assigned all the damage to the horror, so that he would not allow it to die, get a token, come back.
Right.
Is that Lay Claim? Oh, it has haste. It has haste too.
This is insane.
Oh my god.
That is a splashed Lay Claim. I guess it cycles.
So he just attacked for 1 million.
That was 6, 7, 8, 9, 11. Oh, no, 14. No, 11.
11.
Yeah.
Eduardo falls down to 8. Is there anything he can do?
Well, he's all the colors, so it's possible.
All right, well, he's going to
Okay.
do quite... Yeah, it's definitely possible. He's going to play 2 cards in one turn. This is Crocodile the Crossing. A 5/4 that gets a -1/-1 counter on a
What a
creature you
swingy
control.
card.
It has haste. He also played Cartouche of Strength, and he had it fight his own Samut.
Yeah. But imagine Eduardo's situation just 1.5 turns ago, right? When he was attacking with the
Oh my
Sandworm.
God.
Brad, all he had was 1 mana up. He's just like, well, this is just free 7 damage.
Yeah.
He loses the Sandworm to the pump spell. He's like, well, it's okay. I still have the Samut, and my hand is great. I have a Crocodile and a Cartouche. And then they just steal the Samut.
Wow, that's absurd.
But Brad's still got pretty good defenses here.
Here's Spring for
Ooh.
Eduardo. He's already got his only... he can actually go get another island here. He's already got his only planes out,
I kind of wanted to see him get Mountain, but
which he does have one of in his deck.
I
by
imagine
the way.
Samut is probably just the only red card in his deck.
Yeah. Also, he wants to be able to cast Mind.
Maybe it was like a stipulation sealed where he's like, okay, I'm going to play all my rares. So let's just...
I don't think that Eduardo's doing the stipulation sealed. Here's a Champion of Ronas now for Eduardo. I mean, how much action can he really have left in the tank here? But still, that's the kind of card that, well, let's just call it a mana fixer
yeah.
for
yeah.
him.
The thing is, like, at this point in the game, he has a ton of mana, so the ability is not going to be that great. But he did cast a Spring to Mind.
Yeah.
He can cast a Mind. Maybe he has another Greater Sandworm in his deck, and then he can exert it and put it into play. One issue, because I've tried playing this card as well, and of course the upside is huge. Well, sometimes you play it, though, and your opponent just plays a Colossopede, and you're just like, oh, I'm not going to exert this. It's just going to be a 4-mana 3/3.
Yep. Combat tricks help out Champion of Ronas quite a bit as well.
Right.
People tend to block it more often than a normal 4-mana 3/3 because they don't want to see you do repeated triggers of the exert on it.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, he gets to play 2 cards in one turn. A Quarry Hauler is going to add an additional counter.
The Defiant Great Maw is now at 2/3.
Indeed. And he's also got a Bitterblade Warrior.
Yeah, so now he's setting up where he actually has a reasonable attack with the Bitterblade Warrior. He can choose to exert it, and I guess it would attack through a Doom Dissenter and the Great Maw, because I don't think Brad wants to trade the Channeler Initiate for it.
That's right. And like you said, remember, he still has Mind in his graveyard. And he has Champion of Ronas, so he could have a truly explosive turn here, draw 2 cards, perhaps put something big onto the battlefield.
This is a nice little combination that we saw before.
He drew the mountain, by the way.
Where's the swamp? Now we just need to see the swamp.
No, there's no swamp. That's the only one he's not playing.
He doesn't need it.
No. I mean, he doesn't need any of these. He has the Gift of Paradise sitting down there, so.
Yeah. Nice interaction with the Channeler and all -1/-1 counter effects.
Seems like a fine place to put your -1/-1 counters. The funny part is when you need the mana and you run out of them. And you're like, oh, man, my 2-mana 3/4.
Yeah, it is interesting, right? Because sometimes you play the Initiate on turn 2, and let's say you play a land, you play 3-drop. You're like, all right, am I supposed to remove a counter here to make it bigger, or do I need this mana at some point later in the game?
Totally. Really depends on the fixing aspect pretty heavily.
Yeah.
Oh, speaking of Sandworms, here's Brad Nelson with the Sandworm after the trade-off.
That's a late claim in Eduardo's
No way.
head.
Is it really? Oh, still your Sandworm?
This is great.
You guys are just throwing permanents back and forth at each other.
Oh, look at the haymakers.
He doesn't have a clean attack otherwise, though. And you can see that Brad has decided to leave that counter on the Channeler Initiate, by the way.
He could have made the Bitterblade Warrior attack.
Yeah.
It's not like a great trade because at the end of the day, he loses his creature and Brad basically, gets a zombie and loses a 1/2. But Brad is playing black-green. He could have ways to remove counters, something like an Hapatra's Mark, and then all of a sudden the Great Maw becomes a pretty big threat.
Attention Magic players, there are just over 10
There's another blue card. I'm assuming it's a rare. And that's a Trial of Zeal. Eduardo's deck is nice. It's one of those, if everything clicks, it's got the power to be a 9-0 deck.
Yeah, totally.
Everything falls apart. You're not making day 2.
That's right. It really comes down to how well his deck is constructed.
Is that a?
Yes.
That is a rare, right?
Vizier of Many Faces. That's a mythic rare.
Jeez.
Right? I think it's a mythic.
I'm not sure. It might just
Anyway,
be rare.
whatever. It's a
sandworm.
Super bomb.
It's
Yeah,
a
it's another
sandworm.
sandworm, exactly. Vizier of Many Faces has been very impressive to me. Yeah, regular rare.
Although I think I would have considered just playing it prior to attacks. You don't exactly know what Brad has. If Brad has some kind of combat trick that kills the greater sandworm,
Or returns it to his own hand.
right? Then there's not
Like returns a tapped creature to his own hand, for example.
like a Gale Strike.
Hey.
Yeah. Then you don't have what you copy is just so much worse,
Yeah,
right?
it's true. Or you have to wait a whole turn to do it.
Yeah.
Trial of Zeal to finish you off. All right, that means we can go back to our main match. That was
Wow.
Eduardo Sajkalik finding a victory. Lay claims flying around the table.
What a heavyweight fight that one was.
No kidding. And we're in game 3 here. We saw Yvonne Flock win over the mana troubles of Steve Rubin. In game 2, though, Steve Rubin was able to be the aggressor and pile it on. And holy smokes, we got a board state here, don't we, Paul?
Yeah, that's double greater sandworm. It looks like a mouth, but I think the mouth is just in the graveyard. He might have.
Oh, yeah.
I don't think he has.
He's going to draw 5 cards off of that, off of feed.
But that's Liliana's mastery.
Yep. Wow, we got
2
a
more
real
3/3s on the
slugfest
board.
here. These sandworms doing defensive duty.
But I actually like Yvonne's spot here. He's at a healthy 17 life.
He is, and he's going to draw a bunch of cards.
Right. He's going to draw 5 cards.
5 cards he's going to draw.
Oh my goodness.
How could there be something better to do than that, Yvonne?
That's the thing. If I drew 5 cards, I don't even know if I could get mad if I lost. You at
Agreed.
least got to draw 5 cards.
You have to draw 5 cards.
That is just such an amazing feeling.
5 for one of you.
Like a 0, right? You got a 3/3 on the board too.
You mean from mouth?
Yeah, for mouth, yeah.
I like the artwork too, by the way.
It's just a picture of a big hippo mouth.
Well, the hippo's trying to eat the flamingo,
Yeah.
and then he's just kind of chilling down on feed. Oh, but he's got Sandworm Convergence. What's better than drawing 5 cards? Casting Sandworm Convergence.
Yeah, that's just a 5/5 every turn. And black red this
They have no way.
they have no way.
They have literal no way.
There is no disenchant effect.
No.
Right?
No, they have to
there's
take
no,
it from your hand.
There's no lay claim.
No. No.
Steve might actually just be drawing dead
Like
here.
he could just be stone drawing dead unless he can put together a lethal attack through something splashed. It takes weird. You start to think of like falter effects.
There's no destructive tampering in this set,
No,
right?
there's not that. There's Destined to Lead, which requires green mana. Like those are the type of weird interactions that you start to think of when you think of a way to get out behind this Sandworm Convergence. And I don't think that Steve has any of them.
Island, lay claim. All right,
Yes.
now I think it's time to draw some cards now. What is that? 6 cards now?
He
Even
actually
more
has
value.
to consider firing this off before it gets too.
So he doesn't deck
Like
himself?
he might deck himself. This is a lot of board state to work through, and Yvonne's going to want to start chipping away with the Sandworms once he feels like he has enough of a defensive presence to back him up. But
Oh, he's got the
come on.
3rd sandworm in his hand. You can't lose when you draw all
This
3.
is a joke.
Yeah, this card, it's it is probably the build-around card in the set, right?
I think
you,
it's
you open this card,
definitely.
you take it, and then you're like, all right, well, I'm just going to make sure I
I'm gonna
survive
do
and
it.
ramp.
Yes, I agree.
It's so good.
Because when you cast it, you have such a high likelihood of winning the game.
Right.
You get the worms on your end step, so they help you not die on the ground, and they lock up the air immediately. This card does. So,
Yeah.
and it's hard to interact with. There's not that many cards in the set that deal with Sandworm Convergence.
Yeah. The only downside is that there is a cycling instant in the format that does get rid of it.
Yeah. In white.
Forsake the Worldly, I
Forsake
believe.
the Worldly. Yeah, it's really annoying
Right,
to
and
have your Sandworm Convergence killed.
and
by
it's a
that.
card that, especially in sealed deck, if you're playing against a white deck, they're just if they open it, they're probably going to play 1 copy of it, right? Because
I would not be shocked.
Yeah.
It just cycles.
Right.
And it kills some pretty important cards too.
Right. Compulsory Rest, Edifice of Authority. There's just a lot of good cards.
Yeah, Oracle's Vault. Yeah, and Steve Rubin just looks at his hand and says, I know the rest of the cards in my deck, and none of them can beat that one.
It's like, you have 40 power on the board.
Wow. Sandworm Tribal for Yvonne Flock gets the job done. 3 greater Sandworms plus the Convergence.
Yeah.
Overkill. But
it's one of those
to
things, too. It's like, I don't think he actually needed the Convergence, but it is sweet to see somebody actually cast it and win. We got kind of robbed in round 2 where the opponent, where one of the players only had 7 lands in play with it in hand.
We did. Big smile there for Yvonne Flock. All right, game 3 between these two. We saw Eduardo Sajgalik re-steal the victory back from Brad Nelson. Both players resolved lay claims, but Eduardo's was the last to go.
It looks like Eduardo has just 4 uncastable cards in his hand. There's like a white spell, a gold card, a forest.
This is like when people put it on Twitter and say, should I keep this guy? And it's like island, forest, 3 black cards. Like, no. All right. Well,
all I know is at the end of day 1, I don't want to walk up to Eduardo, talk to him about his deck, and him going, you won't believe the number of times I mulligan with
Yeah. Man issues all day, guys.
Yeah,
Somebody
I just don't even understand.
Yeah.
I constructed the perfect deck.
Right. The old 9-4-1-1-1 mana base.
Yeah. It's like, if my lands tapped for all the mana, my deck would be a 9 or a 10. But how many forests? Okay, at least he's got the 9 forests in there. What is the best card in his deck? Is it Gift of Paradise? It might be Gift of Paradise.
Just as far as peak power level goes, like the Vizier of Many Faces is certainly one of his best cards. The card he wants to see in his opener the most is definitely Gift of Paradise.
Yeah.
He just needs one of those.
Right.
He's also playing Sweltering Suns, which
which
is quite strong, but he's only got 1 mountain in his whole deck.
And that's the kind of card you want to play like turn 3 or 4.
Yes, you would ideally like to wipe away a bunch of
I guess the argument is sometimes you get really lucky and play turn 3 Gift and play it.
Yeah.
Or you just cycle it.
Yeah, he's got Painted Bluffs too, yeah. And then, of course, worst case, you cycle it. It's a bit clunky at 3 to cycle, but whatever. Okay, Ornery Kudu for Brad Nelson is going to kick things off, but what about Eduardo?
Looks like a Trial of Zeal here.
Play a spell. There we go.
Eduardo just wants to make sure there's as many creatures off the board as possible and just get to that late game.
Yeah, he can't really afford to let Brad keep really any threats around, given his relatively clunky mana. Defiant Great Maw for Nelson.
That would have been a really nice start for Brad. Turn 3 Kudu into turn 3 Great Maw, which would have then removed the counter that was on the Ornery Kudu. Cartouche of Strength?
Yep, that's going to kill the Champion of Ronus, the best mana fixer in Eduardo's deck.
Yeah, that card is just...
It's a beating.
It just impressed me more and more.
It's such a beating.
You're talking about
the cartouche, right?
Yeah, the cartouche of strength. We talk about that card's also beating. Maybe another cartouche. Oh, final reward.
Yeah,
okay.
I'm curious why Eduardo played it there.
I think he just wanted to get in for 6.
He just wanted to jam.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense.
That might be. Is that an Honored Hydra?
Potentially pay a price for it though, as the final reward takes it out.
Yeah.
And although it will not be coming back.
Yeah.
But Brad did take 6 and go down to 14. It makes sense. Here's Spring for Eduardo. Going to go find himself an island.
Yeah, Brad's deck looks like it's got a good amount of power and is also kind of staying within. I guess he's also splashing late claim.
Yeah.
But his deck's definitely not going quite as deep as Eduardo's.
No. Yeah. Eduardo is in all the different colors.
Another thing that maybe people would not recognize when they play with the card Cartouche of Strength that I also learned by the hard way is, it's an aura that allows you to fight a creature. And oftentimes when you cast cards like that, it's a must. Cartouche of Strength is a may.
Yep.
So when you play Cartouche of Strength on your creature to get rid of another creature and your opponent responds by trying to pump their guy, you can just be like, no fight.
Yeah.
I'm good. I'm just gonna, I'm gonna chill.
Peace, man.
Yeah, so let's basically print a Hunt a Week, which was one of the best common removal spells in the previous set. Make it cost 1 less, give it trample, and also give it a May ability.
Yeah, that's a great card.
Yeah.
Really, it is. You know, they have to push those auras
Right.
to make them playable by people who are, you know, in the know
Right.
and are willing to take that risk. And I'll tell you what, they sure did.
Yeah. These are like auras you want to play.
You want
And on
these
top
cards.
of that,
They're high picks.
They are high picks, and on top of that, you have the trials. And if you ever pick an early pick trial, that means you evaluate the cartouches even higher, because of course with the trials, whenever you play a cartouche, you get to return the trial back to your hand and then cast it again for additional value.
Looks like benefaction of Ronas here, and Eduardo has found his gift of paradise, and he's deciding if he wants a Colossopede or a Naga Vitalist. He goes for the Colossopede, and he's going to go ahead and just cast this.
And I think Eduardo might have actually
right now.
stabilized with just the Honored Hydra here.
Yeah.
Brad just does not have a great attack.
Yeah, Brad really needs to find an answer for that.
He could attack with
can
the Scorpion
chip
here.
in with a Scorpion, but that is just not the type of big hitter as Eduardo. He has got an incredibly scary board because he now has access to all of his mana. So when he untaps here, anything could happen, right? I mean, he could cast any card in the set. If you're sitting in, he could just be like Glorybringer, attack you. You know, from Brad's perspective, this is a really scary turn now that Eduardo's fully set up mana-wise.
He's got 5 cards in hand.
He has a Vizier.
They're
of
probably
Many
all
Faces,
different
too.
colors. Let's see, there's a Decimator Beetle, a Compulsory Arrest, a Vizier of Many Faces.
That's 4 of the 5. He needs a red card in there to complete.
He's
the
already
cycle.
cast his Samut. So
Yeah, it's exiled. That's really funny.
Man. This is definitely the type of deck that I dream of drafting when I try to draft these ramp decks, but I am not brave enough to go this deep on the colors.
This isn't a nightmare. This is a dream. Okay.
This is the dream.
All right, he's going to decide to cast Compulsory Arrest on the Scorpion, and then he's going to also play a Colossopede to further bolster his board position.
Yeah. Brad in a lot of trouble here. None of his creatures really have, he doesn't really have a good attack here.
No. And, I mean, from a big picture perspective, this was the turn where Eduardo really had started to assert the authority that his deck can have after having finally found the Gift of Paradise. But what about from Brad's side? I mean, his deck's more straightforward as a green-black with some other stuff in there. You know, we saw Lay Claim and that kind of thing, but
Right.
that's not the kind of card that we're going to see cast by him too often.
Yeah, the big turning point was when Eduardo tapped out for the, oh my goodness, Cartouche of Strength with the Trial of Zeal on the battlefield.
And he's playing it on a Colossopede, which is going to just go ahead and kill. Yeah, and he gets away with it too. That should go on the battlefield.
Why is the Cartouche in the graveyard?
Yeah, Cartouche goes on the battlefield.
It's not Hunt a Week.
Right, there we go. And it does give +1/+1, so he
Right.
does need that, and trample.
And Trample, yeah.
Yeah, now that's a 6/6 Colossopede to match the 6/6 Trampler sitting next to it in Honored Hydra. But wait,
Goodness.
there's more. Here comes the trial.
Yeah, he could play the Trial, or he could even opt to just play the Vizier of Many Faces here and just make another Colossopede. Oh, sorry, an Honored Hydra.
Yeah.
That would give him 3 6/6 Tramplers on the battlefield.
Even mouth to feed can't combat that kind of madness.
One is not enough. Even Sandworm Convergence wouldn't do it. He would need to play actual Sandworms.
Yeah. Brad's considering some type of double block here.
Yeah, he's got
big problems.
he's got a 3/4 Trampler here and a 2/3. So that, but the Colossopede has taken 3 damage.
It did fight. So they are going to...
Did he forget that they fought? I think Eduardo might have missed that the Colossopede's taken 3 damage.
Or does the...
Yeah,
there we go. He may have missed that, or he also might have been fine.
Or
trading.
it
Yeah.
could have also been the thing.
In the meantime, Vizier of Many Faces gives him the third one. Brad just simply throws a swamp on the battlefield.
I had all
and
these.
extends the hand,
I
and
had all
look at this.
these.
Eduardo gets to show him the goods. I don't think Brad's going to be too interested in that at this particular moment, but that was Eduardo Sechkalik winning with a ambitious mana build, but a very powerful deck as a result.
Players hit B.
I think the word might be sweet.
Your seedings for deck construction are being posted.
Wow.
with a black gathering point banner that is moving towards your appearance board.
Kind of just want to see more of this deck.
Kind of do.
it's but it also feels like just as somebody who you talk a lot about limited and all that, and it's like you're just like, this just should not work this often, right?
Right. And
How is he getting there?
Look, he's probably played one round.
He's played
This
one
is
round.
his first round, so I'm okay with him winning a round. But, you know, like if this is the type of deck that goes undefeated, I mean, it is kind of tough because the mana base could be actually decent.
Right.
You know, like it looks sketchy, and it is sketchy, but, you know, he does have a significant amount of fixing and ways to find
And
it.
again, there's also less just really, really aggressive decks because we are playing sealed deck, right? So this is the type of thing that you can get away with more in sealed deck than in limited, where it feels like if his opponents just go 2-drop, 3-drop, exert creature, he's going to have a lot of trouble. Because I don't think I saw a whole lot of 2-drops out of Eduardo Sagicalic's deck.
Yeah, I definitely think, like...
Like his plays turn 3 Gift of Paradise. That's what he wants to do every game.
Right, and that is very slow.
Yes.
All right, we're going to take a short break here, but when we come back, we'll have an update from GP Beijing and as well as some Time Walk Magic. We'll be back right after that.